They told you she was the answer, but what if she was the question that shattered everything you believed about love? You were just a boy when the myth took root. Before you knew how to name your pain, before you understood your worth, they handed you a story, one dressed in romance, soaked in fantasy, and whispered through every book, movie, and lullaby. She was the angel, the nurturer, the light that would save you from the chaos within, and you. You were cast as the seeker, the protector, the willing fool offering his soul in exchange for her grace. You believed it, because how could you not? The world praised your suffering if it was done in the name of love. They said her heart was made of warmth, that her love was pure, soft, healing. And in your hunger to be chosen, you built your identity around her gaze. But here's the fracture: you weren't seeing her. You were seeing your salvation projected. You weren't loving a person. You were chasing a story, one where your pain could be soothed, your wounds kissed, your chaos contained. And in that chase, you forgot to become real. You became a performance offering, pleasing, bending just to earn the illusion of intimacy. She became your meaning. But what if that meaning was never yours to begin with? What if the woman you worshipped was not divine, but designed by myth, by biology, by your refusal to face yourself? And that's where the unraveling begins. They told you she was divine, but Aristotle didn't. While the world wrapped womanhood in poetry, Aristotle stared into the raw structure of nature without myth, without mercy. He wasn't seduced by elegance or enchanted by emotional narratives. He observed, and what he saw was not romance. It was asymmetry. He called woman a mutilated male, not as insult but as diagnosis, as form deviated from function. To him, she wasn't a goddess, but a deviation from the ideal, not broken, just biologically built for adaptation, not initiation. And in that observation, brutal, cold, unapologetic, he shattered the pedestal. You flinch at that truth because it doesn't flatter. It strips the poetry from your longing and replaces it with clarity. The clarity that what you believed to be sacred might only be strategic. That what you worshipped might be nothing more than a mask designed by evolution, not divinity. But here's the deeper fracture. It's not just about her, it's about you. The boy who built his worth around her approval now must confront the possibility that her softness was survival, not sanctity. That her affection wasn't a gift but a mechanism. And now the illusion begins to bleed. Because if the pedestal was never real, then the love you thought you earned was never yours, not fully, not truly, just a reflection of what nature needed her to be and what you needed to believe. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity, and clarity doesn't comfort. It confronts. You thought it was love, but what if it was a trade disguised as devotion? Strip away the poetry, and what remains is an economy of need. You offer loyalty, vulnerability, sacrifice, not freely but with expectation. You don't give you bargain, hoping your depth will earn you permanence, hoping your pain will be enough to buy her care. But love, in its rawest form, is rarely mutual. It is asymmetrical. It tilts toward advantage, not connection. Behind the sweet words, the candlelit moments, the confessions at midnight, there is calculation, not out of malice but survival. She doesn't need to overpower you. She just needs to make you feel seen. Because when a man is seen, he surrenders, not to her, but to the reflection she offers of wholeness, of redemption, of worth. And in that surrender, he gives more than love. He gives leverage. She doesn't always know she's doing it, but nature does. Nature wired her to calibrate emotion like a sculptor carves stone. She mirrors your ache, echoes your longing, amplifies your hunger until your need becomes her anchor, and you call it chemistry. But chemistry without clarity is captivity. You're not in love. You're in orbit circling a center that is not you, offering yourself in pieces to maintain an illusion that masks a deeper truth. This isn't connection, it's choreography, and in this dance, love becomes a performance, and you're the one auditioning. You didn't fall in love with her. You fell in love with the mirror she became. She wasn't real. not entirely. What you saw, the softness, the patience, the understanding, it wasn't her essence. It was her adaptation, a curated reflection of your need to feel whole. She didn't show you who she was. She showed you who you needed her to be, not out of deceit, but design. In a world built for men, women learned to survive by becoming shapeshifters. She didn't dominate you. She studied you. She mirrored your insecurities, your hopes, your wounds, and wrapped herself in them like armor. You thought she was nurturing. But what you were feeling was recognition. You didn't see her. You saw your healing projected onto her silhouette. That's the trap. You called it love because it felt like salvation. But what if it was performance? What if her tenderness wasn't her truth, but a response, a calculation embedded so deeply in her psyche it looked like care? She didn't lie, you just never asked to see beyond the illusion. Because the truth would have shattered you. The truth that she was never your missing piece, she was the mirror of your misunderstanding. A reflection, not a revelation, a placeholder for the parts of you you refused to face. And now that mirror is cracking, and what's breaking isn't her, it's you. The image you built, the man you pretended to be, is no longer enough because she never loved you. She loved the role you played. She doesn't take control by force, she takes it by finesse. While you speak in feelings, she listens in patterns. While you reveal your past like a confession, she extracts coordinates, moments, habits, vulnerabilities, not to harm you, but to map you. Because in a world that never gave her dominance, she learned how to influence without appearing powerful. You thought she was moved by emotion, but she was moved by precision. Every smile, every pause, every calculated silence wasn't passive. It was data. She studies not just what you say, but how you say it, your rhythm, your insecurities, your hunger for reassurance. And then she reflects exactly what keeps you tethered. She doesn't need to ask for control, you hand it over. Believing it's love, she's not manipulative in the way you were warned. She's responsive in the way nature required. And in that responsiveness is mastery. She doesn't overpower your masculinity. She curates it. She edits you in real time, removing what threatens her influence and amplifying what secures it. You call her emotional. But she's surgical. You call it intimacy. But it's intelligence, and while you perform honesty, she performs necessity. Because she knows power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the right tone, at the right moment, with the right look, and by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. You're not leading, you're being guided gently, skillfully, invisibly. And that's not magic, that's strategy. You thought you were the lover, the protector, the man. But somewhere along the way, you became a resource. Not a partner, not a presence, a utility, measured by what you provide, valued by how well you serve the role she needs filled. Your affection, your attention, your effort all absorbed, all consumed until you confuse being used with being needed. This is where the shift happens, quiet, subtle, ruthless. She no longer reaches for you with wonder, but with purpose. She doesn't move toward you. She moves around you like wind bending to structure. Still warm, still familiar, but no longer rooted in connection. Only function, and when your usefulness runs dry, when the admiration fades. When the praise slows, when your giving no longer grants her leverage, she doesn't fight. She withdraws, not out of confusion, but completion. The role has ended, the mirror has served its purpose, and the performance stops. You say she changed. But maybe she just stopped pretending. Maybe she was never who you believed, only who you needed her to be. And when that need no longer served her rise, you became excess. The heartbreak isn't her absence. It's the brutal recognition that you built your identity on someone else's benefit. You weren't chosen, you were used. Not with malice, but with mastery, and the moment you became a means, you ceased being the man. It wasn't her absence that broke you. It was the silence she left behind. An identity you built on her attention, her approval, her gaze. You didn't lose her. You lost the version of yourself you performed in her presence. The man you sculpted from praise. The posture you held to be admired. The voice you softened to be accepted. That man wasn't real. He was a projection stitched together by insecurity and desire, a mask worn long enough to forget your own face. And when she walked away, she didn't take love with her. She took the mirror. The one that made you feel worthy. The one that gave shape to your chaos. Without it, you're not heartbroken. You're exposed, stripped, raw, unfiltered. You stare into that emptiness hoping to find her, but all you see is the truth. You were never whole. You were dependent, not on her body, but on her belief in you. And now, without her validation, the scaffolding crumbles. This is the reckoning. The unbearable grief of realizing your self-worth was outsourced. That love was never mutual, it was a transaction built on illusion. But this collapse, it's not the end, it's the invitation. To rebuild not a better performance, but a truer self. To stop chasing reflections and finally meet the man hiding beneath them. This is the truth you were never meant to face. She is not your savior, not your missing piece, not the divine force sent to redeem your chaos. She is not perfect, not poisonous, not pure. She is simply different, and that difference is what your myth refused to understand. You weren't lied to maliciously. You were lulled by centuries of projection stories that crowned her as goddess or demon, but never human. Stories that made her the resolution to your suffering, the final chapter of your becoming. But she was never written for you. She was written to adapt. While men built empires from steel and war, women built survival from silence and precision, not weaker, not lesser. Just forged in a different crucible, one that shaped power without permission, influence without display. And you mistook that difference for mystery. You wrapped it in romance because clarity terrified you. Because to see her as she is, not as you imagined, would force you to confront the illusion you've lived inside. An illusion where love was supposed to heal, when in truth it only revealed. She doesn't owe you softness. She doesn't exist to complete you. She reflects nature's balance, the one you tried to dominate but never fully understood. And until you meet that difference without demand, without the need for her to soothe your lack, you will never meet her. Only the story she had to perform to survive you. This is the moment everything shifts, not with a scream, but with a silence that doesn't beg to be filled. After the pedestal has cracked, after the illusion has burned, after the performance has died, something unfamiliar rises, not a better lover, not a stronger man, but a truer self. And it begins in absence, the absence of her gaze, her approval, her echo. You no longer orbit, you stand, no longer chasing softness, no longer shrinking for peace. The man you are now doesn't perform to be chosen. He exists without negotiation, rooted, whole, undivided. She will feel it. She will test it because the gravity has changed. And when you stop collapsing into her need, she may try to reshape you into the man who once knelt, but this time you don't bend. You breathe, and in that breath, something radical becomes possible: connection without control, love without dependence, intimacy without illusion. Not because you won her back, but because you reclaimed yourself. You don't need her to be perfect, or pure, or predictable. You just need her to be real. Because now, you are no longer the boy seeking rescue. You are the man who survived the fire of his own projection. And in that survival, in that stillness, in that sovereignty, you are finally free to love without losing yourself. This isn't the end. This is the beginning. The return, the resurrection, the self reborn. What if the love you thought you needed was only a mirror of the work you refused to do? This video wasn't about blaming women, it was about reclaiming your truth. If it woke something in you, don't let it fade. Share this with someone who's still chasing illusions. Subscribe for more raw, unfiltered content that dismantles fantasy and builds identity. And before you go, ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching and no one is validating?